There is a quiet fire station in California where something unusual still exists. Inside that building, a simple hanging light bulb has been glowing continuously for more than a century. It was installed in a time when electricity itself was still new, fragile, and experimental. No one expected it to last this long, but it did. That small bulb has survived generations of firefighters, countless renovations, and an entire transformation of the modern world outside. Buildings have changed, cities have expanded, technology has evolved from mechanical machines to artificial intelligence. But that one bulb still glows. Now pause for a moment and think about your own life. The phone in your hand will likely be replaced in 2 to 3 years. Not because it completely stops working, but because it becomes slower, less supported, or simply feels outdated. Your laptop may still function, but software updates gradually make it heavier and more demanding. Your headphones break at the weakest point of design. Your appliances are not repaired anymore, they are replaced. And somehow, all of this feels normal. We don't question it. We don't feel surprised anymore. We simply accept it and say, this is just how things work now. But here is a question most people never stop to ask. If something over 100 years old can still function perfectly, why do modern products feel temporary? The answer is not simple. It is not just technology. In fact, modern engineering is more advanced than any point in human history. So the real question becomes deeper. If we can build better things today, why do they not last longer? To understand this, we need to go beyond engineering. We need to enter the world of economics, psychology, and hidden system design. There was a time when durability was the highest standard of quality. Products were not designed for replacement. They were designed for generations. Factories took pride in building machines that could survive decades of use. Heavy metals, thick materials, and repairable parts were the norm. If something broke, it was repaired, not replaced. A single product could serve an entire household for years, sometimes even decades. In many cases, it would be passed down from parents to children. Ownership meant permanence. Buying something meant long-term stability. But as industries expanded and competition increased, a problem slowly emerged. If products last too long, customers don't return. And if customers don't return, businesses stop growing. And in a competitive economy, no growth means failure. So over time, a silent shift began. Instead of asking, how do we make this last forever? Companies started asking, how long should this last so the customer comes back again? This question changed everything. It was not written in advertisements. It was not openly discussed with consumers. It happened quietly inside design rooms, engineering meetings, and production planning. But its impact reshaped the entire modern economy. Once this mindset entered manufacturing, product design slowly began to change. Not instantly, not obviously, but step by step. Materials became slightly cheaper. Internal parts became harder to access. Repairability started disappearing. Screws were replaced with glue. Modular systems were replaced with sealed units. Products began to look modern, smooth, and minimal, but inside they became harder to fix. On the surface, everything still worked fine. But internally, something fundamental had changed. Products were no longer built for maximum lifespan. They were built for controlled lifespan, not too short to annoy the customer, not too long to reduce future sales, but perfectly balanced to ensure repeat consumption. This is why modern devices often feel like they just last long enough. They don't die too early, but they don't survive too long either. But physical design is only one part of the system. The deeper force is psychological. Humans do not upgrade only when things break, they upgrade when something better appears. This is where perception becomes more powerful than performance. Imagine two phones, both work almost the same speed, same apps, same usability, but one is slightly newer. It has a different design, a different camera shape, a slightly different display. Instantly, the older phone feels less valuable, not because it stopped working, but because comparison changed perception. This is one of the most powerful forces in consumer behavior, because once dissatisfaction becomes emotional instead of functional, replacement becomes automatic. People stop replacing broken things. They start replacing feelings. As industries grew, companies learned how to accelerate this cycle. New models began releasing faster. Design changes became more visible. Marketing shifted focus from better to new. Even tiny upgrades were presented as major transformations. This created a psychological loop in society. You are falling behind. And when people feel behind, they naturally try to catch up. But the problem is you can never actually catch up. Because there will always be another version coming next year, and another after that. So the feeling of being outdated never disappears. It only resets. Modern life has removed almost all friction from buying. You don't need to plan, you don't need to wait, you don't even need to think deeply. Everything is instant, search, click, buy, delivered. This feels like convenience, but it has a hidden cost. It removes reflection time. There is no gap between desire and action, and when there is no gap, thinking disappears, so decisions become emotional, and emotional decisions become habits, and habits repeat without awareness. This creates a loop. See, want, buy, repeat over time. This loop becomes lifestyle behavior, not a choice, a default system. At first, nothing feels wrong. A new phone feels exciting, a new shirt feels refreshing, a new appliance feels like improvement. Everything feels justified because each decision alone is small, but slowly something starts changing in the background. These small decisions begin stacking. One replacement becomes many, one upgrade becomes a pattern, one pattern becomes a lifestyle, and a lifestyle becomes identity. Without realizing it, people shift from buying things they need to maintaining a lifestyle they cannot step back from. At this point, the foundation of the system is clear. But this is only the beginning, because the real transformation does not happen in products. It happens in the economy, in subscriptions, in hidden costs, and in the way modern life quietly extracts value over time. We stopped at a point where everything felt normal. Buying, upgrading, replacing, all of it had slowly become part of life. But the real system behind it goes much deeper. Because the story is not only about how things are made, it is about how everything is designed to keep moving. At first, the world was built around products. You buy something once and it serves you, but over time, companies realized something important. Selling once is not enough for long-term growth. So the focus slowly shifted from products to systems. Instead of selling you a thing, they started selling you continuous access to a thing. This is where the modern structure of consumption changed completely. Now you don't just buy a product. You enter a system that keeps charging you. It looks harmless at first. A small monthly fee, a subscription, a service. But over time, it spreads into everything. Think about how many things in modern life are no longer owned permanently. Software is not bought anymore, it is rented. Music is not purchased, it is streamed. Storage is not physical, it is cloud-based and paid monthly. Even tools that were once one-time purchases are now recurring payments. This creates a silent shift in your financial life. Earlier, you paid once and moved on. Now you pay forever. And the moment you stop paying, access disappears. So ownership slowly turns into dependency, and dependency is far more powerful than ownership, because ownership gives freedom, but dependency creates control. The reason this system works so well is simple. It does not feel like a system, it feels like convenience. Nobody forces you to subscribe, nobody forces you to upgrade, everything feels like your choice. But in reality, choices are shaped by design. Because convenience removes resistance, and without resistance, spending becomes effortless. When something is easy, the brain does not question it deeply, it simply continues, and that continuation becomes habit. Most people think financial loss happens in big moments. A big purchase, a major mistake, a sudden expense, but in reality, the biggest loss happens silently through small recurring leaks. A subscription here, a replacement there, a new version upgrade, a slightly better model, a convenience service. Each one feels small, but together they create a continuous drain. And because it happens slowly, the brain never recognizes the full scale. It feels like nothing serious is happening, but over years the total becomes massive. There was a time when repairing things was normal. If something broke, you fixed it. If a machine stopped working, you opened it, repaired it, and reused it. Now that culture is disappearing, not because people don't want to repair, but because systems make repair difficult. Parts are sealed, designs are locked. Software blocks third-party repairs, and repair costs sometimes become higher than replacement, so naturally people choose replacement. And when replacement becomes easier than repair, repair slowly dies out. This is not accidental, it is structural. Modern economies are built on one core idea: money must keep moving. If money stops moving, growth slows down. If growth slows down, the systems collapse. So everything is designed to ensure continuous movement. Products must be replaced, services must be renewed, Subscriptions must continue. Nothing is allowed to remain static for too long. Even satisfaction is temporary, because long satisfaction reduces consumption, and reduced consumption affects growth. So systems naturally push toward constant dissatisfaction, not openly, but subtly, through design, marketing, and social comparison. Another powerful layer is social influence. People don't just compare what they have, they compare what others have. And in today's world, comparison is constant. Social media shows upgrades, new purchases, better lifestyles, latest gadgets. It creates a silent pressure. If others are upgrading, I should too. Even if nothing is wrong with what you already have, this creates emotional consumption not based on need, but based on visibility. And visibility is endless, because someone somewhere is always upgrading. If you break down modern consumption over 10-20 years, something interesting appears. The cost is not in individual items, it is in repetition. Phones replaced multiple times, clothes replaced continuously, subscriptions running forever, devices upgraded repeatedly. Each layer adds silently, and because everything is spaced out, the brain never calculates total lifetime cost. It only sees small monthly or yearly amounts, but reality is different. Small leaks over long time become large losses. One of the strongest illusions in modern life is that newer always means better. But in reality, newer often means redesigned for faster replacement, not always in quality, but in structure. A slightly thinner part, a slightly sealed design, a slightly limited repair option, a slightly shorter lifespan. Individually, these changes feel minor, but collectively they shape entire industries, and over time they shape behavior. People stop expecting durability. They start expecting change. At this point, the system becomes self-sustaining. Companies design products with limited lifespan. Consumers accept replacement as normal. Economies depend on continuous buying, and culture reinforces consumption through comparison. Each layer supports the other, and together they form a loop that keeps running without interruption. No single person controls it, but everyone participates in it. And now we reach a deeper question. If everything is designed for movement, what happens when someone stops moving? What happens when someone refuses to upgrade? What happens when someone breaks the cycle? Because logically, there is always an alternative path, but that path is not encouraged. It is not promoted, and it is not always easy to follow. This is where the story starts to shift, but we will continue this in the final section. We are now approaching the core realization behind the entire system, how consumption, design, and psychology merge into one structure that quietly shapes everyday life. We reached a point where everything is moving in a loop. Products are designed to be replaced. Systems are designed to be renewed. And life itself starts feeling like a cycle of constant upgrading. But now we go deeper. Because the most important question is not how this system works. The real question is, what happens if someone refuses to participate in it? Imagine a person who stops reacting to every new model. A person who does not upgrade just because something newer appears. A person who does not replace things immediately when they slightly slow down. At first, nothing dramatic happens. The world continues normally. Ads still appear, new products still launch, people around still upgrade, but something changes internally. The pressure starts to reduce because the emotional trigger weakens. And slowly, for the first time, the space appears between desire and action. That space is powerful, because in that space, thinking returns. When you are inside the consumption loop, decisions feel automatic. But when you step outside even slightly, you start noticing patterns. You begin to see how often things are replaced. You start noticing how quickly new becomes old. You realize how many purchases were not necessary but emotional, and this awareness changes the entire relationship with money. Money stops feeling like something that disappears randomly. It starts feeling like something that follows patterns. Patterns that can be controlled. Most people live inside the system, but once awareness grows, you stop being only a participant. You become an observer. You start questioning, do I really need this upgrade? Is this purchase solving a problem or just an emotion? Will this still matter in a year? These questions seem small, but they change financial behavior completely, because most spending is not logical. It is reactive, and once reaction slows down, spending naturally reduces. When you stop chasing constant replacement, something interesting happens. You start valuing durability again. Things that last longer begin to feel more meaningful. A well-built item no longer feels old. It feels stable, reliable, grounded. And this shift changes everything about consumption. Instead of asking, what is new? You start asking, what lasts? And this one question alone changes financial direction completely. Earlier, we talked about silent financial leaks. Subscriptions, replacements, upgrades, convenience services, individually small but collectively large. When awareness increases, something changes. You start identifying these leaks one by one, and once you see them clearly, they lose power, because unconscious spending only works when it is invisible. The moment it becomes visible, it becomes optional. People often think wealth comes from earning more, but in reality, stability comes from keeping more. Not everything you earn becomes wealth. Only what you retain becomes wealth, and retention depends on control over lifestyle expansion. Because income increases naturally feel like permission to increase spending, but without control, every raise disappears into upgraded lifestyle. Bigger house, better car, more convenience, more subscriptions, and the cycle resets again. The modern problem is not income, it is imbalance between earning and lifestyle adjustment. Income grows in steps, but lifestyle grows silently and continuously, so even when income doubles, expenses quietly follow it, and the gap between them never increases. That gap is where real wealth is created, but most people never protect it. The important realization is this: the system is not going to slow down. New products will continue to come, marketing will continue to evolve. Subscriptions will continue to expand. That is how modern structure works, but personal control is still possible. You cannot stop the system, but you can change your position inside it. You can decide how much you participate. And that decision changes everything. Now think again about that century-old light bulb. Still glowing, still functioning, still stable in a world of constant replacement. It represents something powerful, that durability is not impossible. It is just not prioritized anymore. And once you understand that, the illusion breaks. You realize things don't always fail because they must. They fail because the system prefers them to fail. Everything we explored leads to one conclusion. Modern consumption is not random, it is structured. It is designed around repetition, but awareness breaks repetition, because once you see the pattern clearly, you no longer follow it blindly. You pause, you evaluate, you decide differently, and that difference over time becomes powerful, not because you stop buying completely, but because you stop buying unconsciously. So the real message is not to reject modern life. It is to understand it, to see what is necessity and what is engineered desire. To recognize what is value and what is repetition disguised as progress. Because once you understand that difference, you stop being just a consumer in the system, and you start becoming someone who controls their position inside it.